All right, hello everyone and welcome back to the show. I'm Ben Jones, your host, and today as we kick off the new year, 2024, I have a very special guest that I believe is going to have an amazing impact on you as we get into that mindset of really being able to change your life, really make this year count and do some amazing things. And, before I get into introducing him, first and foremost, one of the things that we say, if you are getting value from this show, make sure you like it, leave a positive review in the comments, and share this with a friend. Help get the word out. Just because here at Fit Body Boot Camp, our mission is to change lives every day. And if this has had an impact in you or on your life, then again, our ask is share this and let's get that word out. And so today, man, I'm super excited about this interview. You have a very special guest, a local, what in my opinion is a hero to the state of Arizona, is Sheriff Mark Lamb.
I appreciate that. Thank
absolutely. And you know what? I can't wait for you to hear his story today. And I think a lot of just being able to talk through his mission, what he's done, I think, and even just really what it is to be a leader. And I think a big part of this, is some of the things that we talk about on here is being a leader and leadership, and how you have that impact. And again, it ties back to our mission of changing lives every day, and that's through being an effective leader. And so, Sheriff Lamb, hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, I think as we're kicking all this off, we were talking a little bit beforehand of just, man, this is going to be a big year for you. You got a lot of exciting things coming. You're running for the state Senate or being to be a
U.S.
senator.
Senate,
US
yeah.
Senate, sorry, U.S. Senate, yeah. And I mean, man, I think there's just a lot that kind of goes into that. And so I think before we dive into that, it's just, I think really for those that maybe they don't know you, and I think as we kind of get into your story, maybe get a little context of just who you are, your family, what Arizona means to you, and just what brought you to being the sheriff.
Yeah, look, I'm Sheriff Lamb. I'm Sheriff of Pinal County, but I come from a long line of Arizonans as well. I was not born in Arizona, but my family kind of settled Arizona in a lot of ways. One part of my family, the other part has been here for generations. I'm married 29 years to a beautiful wife from Mesa as well, and 5 kids and 3 grandkids. So been very blessed in that area. I was, like I said, born and raised in Hawaii on the Big Island in Hilo. And my dad was a graduate of Thunderbird Business College. First people ask, oh, you must be military. No, my dad was just an international businessman, loved it. And we moved from Hawaii when I was 11 to the Philippines. I lived in the Philippines for a year, which was great because what happened is we learned about poverty. We learned just how much we appreciated America. Then we moved to Chandler, which is where my dad was from, went to junior high and high school there. While I was in high school, my family moved to Panama.
Where'd you go to high school?
Chandler High.
Chandler High.
Back when there was only one high school in Chandler. One high school. Now there's a bunch of high schools, but one high school in Chandler. Chandler Junior High. So any Chandler folks out there, I've eaten my share of Elmers. Still do. Still do. Yeah, so when I was in high school, my family moved to Panama. And I spent a lot of time in Panama. I was actually in Panama when the United States invaded Panama in Operation Just Cause. Okay. And that was quite the experience. And then I went on a mission for my church to Argentina, the Buenos Aires, and I lived there for a couple years. And since I've been back, I've been predominantly in Arizona, but that's pretty much in a nutshell where I come from.
All right, awesome. Well then, obviously you made that decision of getting into law enforcement that's led to you being a sheriff. Talk a little bit about that. What made you go in that direction when jumping into your career?
Well, that was a later in life decision. I had never thought about being a cop. Yeah. That was not on anything I had ever thought about. Nobody in my family is a police officer. Nobody in my wife's family is police officers. I was a businessman, had been running my businesses. I had a decent business, but I just felt like I needed to do more.
Yeah, what was your business?
Well, I've predominantly done marketing and with an emphasis on pest control. At the time I was doing pest control, pigeon control. I had kind of had to rebound because I had a business in Utah that unfortunately when Walmart moved into town, a little paintball business, and it basically just killed my business overnight. Actually had to do a bankruptcy, had to kind of go through all of that and recoup and regroup, and we moved back here to Arizona, which is where we were from. And we really just kind of put our nose to the grindstone and started another business and just kind of grinding through it, and had no intentions of ever being a cop until my neighbor said, hey, you want to do a ride along? And I said, sure, why not? I'll go on a ride along. Yeah. Went out to a ride along at the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, so right there in Mesa, Tempe, Scottsdale, right in that area. And we went on that ride along. It was a night shift, graveyard shift. We had a call for a dad who had found a 20-year-old guy with his 14-year-old daughter. So they get into a fist fight. Guy runs out the back. We show up, and you know how the reservation is. You'll have a house and then nothing behind it, maybe an old abandoned travel trailer. So I'm out there armed with a flashlight and courage, walking around the desert looking for this guy. I look into the window of this old abandoned travel trailer, and I see what I think is, amongst all the trash and debris, what I think is a quarter size of skin. And so I say to the guys, hey, look, I think he's right in here. So they go in there, and sure enough, he's under all that stuff. So they grab him out, rough him up, tase him, put him in cuffs. And I went home that morning and told my wife, hey, honey, I'm going to be a cop. And so ever since, and 6 months later, I was in the academy and on my way to being a police officer. And frankly, I've loved it ever since.
Awesome. Well, and which city, where'd you get your start? Which department?
So I started right there with the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community and loved it working out there. It is challenging in many aspects, but at the same time, it was an opportunity where I felt like I got a lot more growth there than I would have at a larger agency or maybe like a Phoenix PD or one of those. I was able to really get a lot of opportunities. I spent most of my time as a gang and drug detective where we went out and dealt with all the bad gangsters out there, which there is a lot out there. And it really kind of prepared me for that next level that I took in my career. But yeah, I spent the majority of my career out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I know we'll kind of come back to this, but a quick question, especially with, you know, being part of the gang and drug task force there. You know, I mean, man, I'm sure you've got some pretty crazy stories from that. And I think, you know, with that, like, what is just maybe like one of the craziest situations you ever encountered when you were working in that?
Oh man, you know, a lot of those crazy situations you forget about because you've been through it so many times. You know, they say the average cop experiences between 400 and 700 traumatic experiences in their careers, where the average citizen experiences 2 to 4. So you can see the amount of damage it does to us as cops. But and a lot of times we shut those things out. I remember one time we were having a rash of, the one that comes to my mind is we were having a rash of drive-by shootings in this area. And so we were doing a lot of patrol. I was actually kind of unmarked that day, or I was in plain clothes. So I just had like a Dickie or a K-Momo Dickie shirt on and pants, and my gun was under my shirt. We were out at a house where they'd been having drive-bys, and these gangsters drove by with their red bandanas over their faces, making gun signs. We didn't see it, but the people said it. They saw it. So we jumped in our car and drove and looked for them. Well, they had pulled into this compound where we pulled a traffic stop on the girl. And unbeknownst to us, she had dropped off the other guys. So we're dealing with her, and I get a phone call from the people saying, hey, they're shooting at our house. They had dropped them off. They had doubled back and went and shot at the house. So we come back around. We leave her. We know she's part of it, but we had to make a decision. Are we going to go towards the fire, or are we going to stay there with her? We decided to give her ID back, and we ran towards the fire. Straight towards it, and it's right into this compound of blood gangsters. And we see them walking towards us, bandanas over their faces, and slam on the brakes, come skid in, pull our guns out. And remember, we're in plain clothes. We're not even in uniform, and we're in a plain clothes or a unmarked truck. And we pull out, guns out, tell them to get on the ground. One of the guys, unbeknownst to me, we found out later, I'll tell you later what he dropped. So they start running, we run after them, running through this compound, and bam, I clothesline this kid, and all of a sudden all the other gangsters come out. I mean, we took him into custody, and what we saw that he dropped was the gun. It had fallen through his baggy pants, through the pocket down to the ground. And had it not, you know, it could have turned out very different. But we were able to get those guys, charge them for drive-by shootings. They did some federal time for it. But, you know, one of the other police officers called out and said, hey, I got a bunch of people chasing each other around with guns over here at this house, not knowing it was us that was doing it.
Wow. Yeah, man, that's pretty crazy. Was that?
I mean, you have a ton of those things, though, but
Oh, yeah.
I know that was a long story, sorry.
No, it was. But I think sometimes it's like, people don't hear about that. They don't hear about what you go through on a daily basis, and these types of things that, because was this on the reservation or what part of
That was on the reservation. The majority of people think that all we do is give tickets. Like all we do is bother citizens. That's not the case. The majority of what we do is preserve the peace. We're peacekeepers.
Yeah.
We're not there to make life miserable for people. I don't like giving tickets. I know some guys do, but we have to curb driving behavior, or else the driving's getting worse and worse. But the reality is we do a lot of scary stuff at night. Our guys are doing stuff all the time. We had a case yesterday where guy beat up his wife and choked her and then ran like a coward. And we tracked him down over in Mesa, and we got into a pursuit, and he crashed into 3 of our cars. And
wow.
I mean, it was a whole thing, but that's what our guys do.
Yeah.
And that's what the citizens expect us to do. So please, when you see them, know that we have to go from 0 to 100 in a split second if the right call kicks out. So
Absolutely. And I think you talk about just the high level fitness, that it takes to be responsible, to be able to do that. And I think especially because a lot of our followers, that's what we do is we help people get in better shape, transform their lives. I'm a firm believer if you don't have your fitness, you don't have your health, you can't carry out your mission in life, right? And so how has just fitness, talk a little bit about that, of like for your personal life, the personal level, the fitness amongst the other officers, of how that's had an impact, or, it's enabled you to do your job.
Well, I've always believed in fitness. I was in pretty decent shape when I decided to become a cop at 34, so I was much older than everybody else. Going through the academy, doing all the running, but I always stayed in pretty good shape. I know it doesn't show right now. Running for office is not good for your physical fitness. It makes it hard to find the time. And then I was in SWAT, and you got to be in good shape for that. As a gang and drug detective, I was now close to 40 years old, and I'm dealing with guys that are 18, they're in their early teens or early 20s. And I always said that I got to make sure that I'm bigger, stronger, faster, and tougher than all of them. And so physical fitness becomes an important part of that. And as a police officer, if you're not physically fit, and trust me, there's plenty of not physically fit cops out there. I know you guys all see it. We love donuts and junk. So, but we have to go from 0 to 100. So you might go from talking to somebody to a full-on fight in a second without any warm-up or anything. And so having the right conditioning is what allows you to do that without getting hurt. And we see a lot of our cops get hurt when they get into a fight or something because they have not maintained that physical fitness. So I try to do it all the time. I've been slacking off, like I said, lately because I have been running like mad to event to event. But it gets back to the discipline of finding that time to make sure that you're staying in shape. Especially now, I'm 51, and I still go out and do the job. And so I got to make sure that I can still, take care of business if I have to.
Yeah, hold your own, right?
Yeah.
No, that totally makes sense. And, I think, so especially my time in the Army, there was a saying, for the ones that didn't take care of themselves, there was height weight standards. You could actually be kicked out of the military if you're overweight or failed the PT test. Is there any type of standards like that in the police department?
So they have standards when you first get in.
Okay.
But then most agencies do not have standards. A lot of it is because of the police unions. The police unions have gotten to where they don't want those standards once you get in. And so I would love to see more standards, physical fitness standards. At minimum, maybe a slight pay increase or a bonus if you maintained a certain physical fitness standard. I think it would be good for them. I try to, I've been a proponent of people getting in and hitting the gym and trying to get as much training as you can. We try to send it to people to training as much as possible. When we were going through SWAT school, there was a saying that you won't rise to the occasion. You will only rise to the highest level of your training. Yep. So you think you might rise to the occasion, your body will go to that level of its highest training, whether it's physical fitness, training on your guns, all of those things. That's where you'll get to.
Absolutely. No, that was also a saying in the Army, it's very much that mindset of, you have to train and train and train until it's muscle memory.
Yeah.
Because when the adrenaline's flowing and rounds are flying, right, that, you're going to fall back on that. It almost becomes reflexive, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, I think with that, and especially, man, you've gone through so much of this being on SWAT. I mean, man, we could probably spend hours talking about some of your stories, but at some point you made this decision to run for sheriff. And, you know, what drove that?
Couple different things, and I paused because I try to decide in my mind which one's more important. Mm-hmm. So I think first and foremost, patriotism to this country.
Absolutely.
I did not like what I was seeing, the direction of the country, and I didn't want to be the guy that just sat and complained about it and didn't do anything about it. And so I remember I was standing with my gang and drug detectives one day, and I just said, it was during actually the Obama and Biden administration, and I just, the way I thought they were really undermining the rule of law. They were really taking away from our profession and making us look like we weren't, that we were the enemy almost. And I couldn't stand by and let that happen. So I told the guys, look, I'm going to run for office. I'm going to run for sheriff. And they're like, you're crazy. And I said, no, man, I'm serious. I'm going to run for sheriff. And they thought I was crazy. But I put in my application to Pinal County, and about 6 months after that, I was on my way to Pinal County to start to work there. So patriotism would be the first one, my love for country, freedom, all those things, a desire to protect it. Number two, frankly, law enforcement isn't, while we have leaders in there are good leaders, it was lacking good, strong leadership. And instead of being the guy that complained about that, I said, I'm going to put myself in a position where I can actually employ the leadership that I think law enforcement wants and needs. And so the twofold was patriotism and wanting to bring the leadership that I thought law enforcement needed to the profession.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. And, you know, I think that we'll kind of come back to this a little bit, but especially in running for office, that was your first time running from some sort of office. And, you know, if there was like a mindset that it took to succeed, like what was that? What was the thing that you think, you know, really, because it starts up here, right?
Yeah.
What was that mindset that it took to kind of have that successful run and become sheriff?
Well, it's like with anything. You have to be relentless, no quit. It is not easy. You know, running for office is not easy. New levels bring on new devils. You know, anytime you try to take a step up, you're going to incur the wrath of the universe, testing to see whether you really do want what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
It does not give it to the lazy, you know. So I would say just my sheer determination and my work ethic is probably what pushed me through, because I knew nothing about running for office. I knew nothing. I would go meet with people and they would say, go meet with this person, go meet with Ben. And I'd sit down with you and you'd tell me, well, you need to do this and this and this. And then what I would do is say, let me think about how I could take marketing principles, because that's what I knew about, and use marketing principles to gain the same goal, to reach the same destination, but without having to pay as much money and without doing it the political way.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I was fortunate enough, because I did it that way, did it a little bit different. When I won in the primary that they thought I would lose up until the day of the election. They thought I didn't have the name recognition. We won 63 to 37% in that primary. And so those things that we did work. Okay. But I knew nothing about it. All I did was work hard. I'm also very God-fearing, and I believe in God. And so what I believe in is you work hard and let God sort the rest of it out.
Absolutely.
If you do the work, it will work out the way it's supposed to work out. And absolutely. I'm in another stage in life where I'm having to rely on that again.
Absolutely. No. And I think that, especially with that, I mean, that someone that is a leader in the community, because I think that's really what this comes back to. I mean, you got a heart to serve, you got a heart for God. I think someone that is called to something higher here with that. And so I think with that, like, someone that's being a leader, like what really has formed your leadership philosophy?
I'm one of those guys, I don't have a specific person that I look to as saying this is my mentor for leadership. I think my 4 core values are God, family, and freedom, and the Constitution. I always throw guns in there as well. God, family, freedom, and guns. Those are my core values. And so anytime I think you're a leader, you need to say, what are my core values? I think a lot of leaders get into it, but they don't have a set of core values. And the people underneath you will know really quick if you have core values that they can get behind. And when they see that you stand up for those core values and that you are unapologetic and that you are unafraid, I think it makes people want to follow you. And so knowing who you are, believing in who you are and what you stand for and what you believe in is probably the first step to getting people to follow you. The next step is treating them well and making sure that you provide for those people that you're expected to lead. And that there's nothing that says you can't discipline people within that. You know, there's a level of discipline. I discipline my children, doesn't mean I don't love them. You need to, there's some level of discipline that's there to make sure that we stay on task. But really, you've got to have people, give people a reason to follow you. And when they do follow you, they need to know that you are going to take care of them and that you're going to take a bullet for them. And that is the type of leadership I've tried to bring. The rest of it is, I am not afraid to say to you, this is the goal. That's where I want you to go. That's where I want our group to go. I want you to get there. Yeah. And I don't get in the way of them doing it unless they're really screwing it up. Because bad leadership tries to micromanage because they're afraid of their leadership skills. And so they try to micromanage as opposed to me letting Ben be who you are. You're a different person than me, so your leadership style is going to be a little bit different. Yeah. I need to empower you to get to that point and then let your leadership and your personality traits and your talents get us there as long as it stays within the parameters we've set.
Absolutely. So. No, I agree 100%. Even here, one of our core values is to be servant leaders, and I think that's, you hit it right on the head. Like, you know what, if you want to lead someone, I don't know, I look at a lot of my leadership as being, was a sergeant NCO in the Army, and that we had to memorize the NCO creed, and there was this whole thing of what it meant. And I think one of the key things is, is just making sure that basically that, your soldiers know that you got their back. Yeah. There's a line, there's discipline, but at the end of the day, it's putting their needs before my own, and that's how we're going to accomplish the mission, is in knowing that I would take a bullet for them, we take a bullet for each other, right? There's a great clip from Braveheart where they're on the battlefield and all the other leaders of the different clans are there, and they're out doing their little thing, trying to really only looking out for themselves, and the actual people there that showed up to as part of the Army knew that. It wasn't until William Wallace rides up on the horse and challenges them and gives them something to believe in and something to fight for that then he energized them, and within a matter of minutes, he was able to get them to follow him into battle. And it wasn't because, it was because he believed in something where the other guys were only looking out for themselves. And those people that they were supposed to be leading knew that and weren't willing to follow him all the way. So, it's a great clip if you ever get a chance to see it. It really encapsulates what it means to have a vision and passion for something and watch those people follow you, even into battle for it. Absolutely. And I think, I've seen it so many times, business is war in a lot of ways. You've owned your business, you understand what it takes to go out there and fight and win. Even being sheriff, even now with what you're doing and running for the U.S. Senate, it's a daily war, it's a daily battle, right? That you got to get out there and do stuff. And, you take some hits along the way. And so I think with that, what is probably the single most difficult thing you've ever been through? And how did falling back on your experience, beliefs, leadership help you overcome and move past this? People look at me and they see that I've been the sheriff and now I'm running for the Senate, and they see the successes. Americans like to only see the successes that people have and don't really see the heartache and pain that went in to get you to that point. I've had a lot of failures in my life. I've failed in business, but I think the hardest thing for us was recently, and I think it was pivotal for us deciding to run for office, was getting a knock on my door December 16th of last year. I have 5 kids, and I at the time had 2 grandkids, and opened the door, and it's Sheriff Paul Penzone with 2 of my chiefs and 2 guys from Gilbert PD. Opened the door and looked at their faces and knew immediately something wasn't right. And one of my chiefs has known my kids for a long time, and since they were little kids, and all my chief could say was, Cooper and the baby are dead. And, in an instant, you lose your son. My son was 22.
I lost my 11-month-old granddaughter, and I lost my daughter-in-law. She died a few days later. And I'll tell you, it will knock you it'll put you on the dirt. And it's hard to even motivate yourself to get out of bed, let alone move forward and do the things you need to do. But going back to leadership, part of what carried me through that was I have an agency of 600 employees. The community looks to us. We have 4 other kids. Everybody's eyes are on you when the leader stumbles in the front and watches to see what you're going to do. And so we made a conscientious decision to get up and move forward and put our faith out in the front to show this is what's carried us through. That combined with the prayers of so many people, that is what carries us through. So that's probably the hardest thing we've been through. And I don't wish it upon anybody, but I will tell you, you can make it through hard things. I think most humans underestimate just how tough and resilient we are. And what we also know is that when those things hit you in life, when you're going through those really hard times, if you can hold your mind and make sure you keep a good attitude and you keep pushing forward and keep marching forward, I promise you the universe has got something great for you in store. Most people give up. And most people never make it to what God or the universe had in store for them because they couldn't withstand the pain.
You know, this is so true. And I mean, I think that is probably one of the single most difficult things that anyone could ever experience in this life. Yeah. And I feel for you in so many ways I can't even imagine. But I think there's profound wisdom in that. You know, and I think that we're all going to have challenges. We're all going to have horrible things that happen. That is part of life. And I think it's either, I don't know, I've just seen for me is what's the lesson in this? It is, how can I find good in this tragedy? You know, and I think it's carrying that on to, you know, a bigger mission, right? Yeah. And I think that's sometimes when things happen, it doesn't make sense. That's the only way you can get through it, is trying to find a sliver of good in these tragic moments, right?
And I think that's why it's so important that you know what your core values is, because the universe has a way of testing those core values. And we're faithful people. We've always been faithful people. We got that faith tested. What is your faith in God and Jesus Christ?
Absolutely.
Do you truly believe that there is life after death? Those are the things that we had to now say, yes, I do. And we're in a gym right now. You test yourself constantly and then when you think you're at that point, which David Goggins says is 40%, when you think you've hit the max that you can do, he says you're at 40%, which means you have 60% more to go. Yeah. And my wife and I knew we had a lot more to give and a lot more to go. And so we're on another path, and I told you before, I'm relentless and I'm unstoppable. Don't let the smile fool you. I am, my nickname at work is the War Machine, so I am a determined person to the core.
But you know, that's what it takes, right? I mean, I think, man, just with anything good, you're going to encounter great resistance. And I think I look at this like the more resistance you're encountering, you know, the more good and the bigger, I believe, you know, God calls us to do bigger things. And it's like, these are all tests, you know, and how do we grow and get stronger from this, right?
Yeah, look, it's not a fight until you meet resistance.
Absolutely.
Look, anybody can come in here and hit the heavy bag. You know, can you get in the ring and actually take the shots? And can you do those things? Yeah. And anything good has a tremendous amount of resistance that comes with it. And when you talked about the criticism, you know, I always say you want to know what you did wrong in life, run for office. You'll find out whether you did it or didn't do it. I've heard things about myself that I never thought I'd hear. You know, and never have I heard anything true. You know, it's always either partial truths or no truths. But Aristotle has a great quote. And Aristotle says the only way to avoid criticism in life is to do nothing, say nothing, or be nothing. And I absolutely refuse to not do anything. I absolutely refuse to not say anything. And I absolutely refuse to not be anything, because my presence here on earth is exactly that, is to be the best that I can be and to challenge myself and to get to a level that God expects me to get to. And so every day, that's my goal and my mission.
Absolutely. Well, hey, and I think, you know, that's a great lead-in for the next question. Is just really, what's made you decide to step up and run for the U.S. Senate? Something that is, in a lot of ways people don't realize you're putting your name, your family, your brand at risk. This comes at a great cost. Why would you go and do this?
I just had this conversation with somebody last night. They were asking me all these questions and stuff. And I said, look, I've slid all my chips into the middle of the table. My finances, my reputation, my family time, my time with my children. I have my job as a sheriff. I've slid all of that, pushed it all into the center. And I go back to the two things that probably got me to this point in the first place. My passion for freedom in this country, my love of it, because I think we're losing it. And we're losing freedoms, justice is being undermined. I could go on. And I just see all these issues. And not to mention, I don't see any leadership in DC. So it's almost like what it was when I ran for sheriff. We needed better leadership, and we needed people passionate about freedom in this country. And then when I looked at the issues, no matter where I go, the core issues are always border, crime, the economy, and now national security, where Americans are very concerned about their security, their daily lives. We all have somebody who's been impacted by fentanyl poisonings. I mean, the list goes on. And I looked at my skill set, the experience that I bring as nearly 20 years in law enforcement, fighting the border crimes, running a large agency with a very large budget that I'm supposed to keep balanced. And there's an old Danish saying that I'm not even going to try to say it for anybody that speaks Danish. There's a Danish saying that says, wherever there is ability, there is responsibility. And I looked at what this country needs, and I think I have the abilities in those areas better than any other candidate. Therefore, I think I have the responsibility to do it. And so I'm not going to stand on the corner while the building burns to the ground. Abraham Lincoln says, to sin by silence when they should protest makes cowards of men. And I will tell you, we should be protesting, and I'm not going to stand by and not protest, and I'm going to do what I can and not just be a complainer. So I'm at another point in life where we're going to see what we can do, but I'm going to put in the work, and God's going to sort the rest of it out.
Absolutely. And man, I think you hit on some big things, because it's just, you see stuff, again, that some of these issues that a lot of people may not even know about, maybe they only hear about it on the news. But what are some of the biggest things that you hope to solve? You get elected, what are some of the top key things that where your focus would be?
Well, the border.
Okay.
The greatest national security threat facing Americans right now is happening at our southern border. Not in the Middle East, not in Ukraine or any of those places, at the southern border. The amount of people that are coming into this country, many people of them, thousands and thousands every day, that don't love America are coming in here. And we are losing our country. And there are good people within those groups, but we have a process in place for them to do it. But there's also terrorists, there's also criminals. Last year we arrested, not us, but on the border, 16,000 people who were wanted by law enforcement here in the United States, or who had already been convicted of crimes and sent back to their respective countries, and now they were trying to come in again. And so that's a tremendous amount of people we're looking to let into this country, not to mention 2 million plus a year, 600,000 gotaways. And then the leading cause of death amongst Americans right now between the ages of 18 and 45, to the tune of more than 100,000 people a year, is fentanyl poisonings, killing American civilians. We know where it's coming from, and yet we're failing to stop it. So when I think of national security threats, I think of what is claiming American lives and what presents the greatest threat to us on a daily basis in our homes. Those are people coming across the border that have bad intentions, and those are people losing loved ones to fentanyl poisonings coming from those same areas on the south of the border. So,
yeah, well, especially with this, there's so much, stuff that you see and hear on the news that you don't know what you can believe.
Very little.
What are you seeing? What's really happening from your perspective? The stuff that you've seen, especially talk about border security. What's the stuff that you've personally been seeing happening there?
Well, first of all, to your point on the truth, my wife always talks about the hardest thing to find in this day and age is going to be truth, especially with AI, the way AI is. Every article I see where I know the truth, I don't know that I've ever seen the media tell the actual truth. You know, they don't do the work that it takes to get the truth anymore. The media has failed the American people. I've challenged the media because it's part of the First Amendment. The reason the Founding Fathers put the media in with freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of the right to peaceably assemble is because they knew how important the media would be. Benjamin Franklin said, I would rather have a country, or Thomas Jefferson, one of them said, I would rather have a country where basically he says, I'd rather have a country with press and no government than a country with a government but no press. So having a country with press is more important to be able to tell the truth, and they're not. So I got totally off on a tangent. They're not telling the truth.
Right.
But what was the other part of it?
Well, with that, like, what are you seeing?
Oh,
What's
the truth on,
happening
Let me tell you what you're seeing. Women are being raped. Children are being raped. Left for dead in the dead. People are being left for the dead in the desert.
Like, pause on that. Like, what do you mean? Like, explain. Like,
We caught a woman the other day. She had about a year or so ago. She had a baggie full of pills, 50 pills, and she said, "We said, what are these pills?" And she said, "Well, when I was going to cross the border, I knew I'd be raped multiple times. These are morning after pills."
Wow.
8 to 10 women coming across the border right now are being raped. Many of them are not able to pay the cartels the cost for coming across the border. So the cartels will enslave them on this side, either put them to work in hard labor or put them in the sex trade. The children, over 140,000 unaccompanied minors are coming in every year right now. The government has admitted they don't know what happened to 85,000 of those children. Many of them were turned back over to the cartels, and they are now in the sex trade here in this country or child pornography trade. Many of them have been placed in hard labor, working in factories where they are just children working in factories under dangerous circumstances. They have been treated like not like people. The cartels are dangerous. They have no value for human life. They extort the men. Like I told you, they leave people for dead in the deserts. They will kill you if you cross them. They will chop you to pieces if you are not following what they want you to do. I mean, these are not exaggerations.
This is stuff that's actually you guys are seeing.
If Americans saw what the cartels do and are capable of on the other side of the border, and then what they do here, which oftentimes doesn't get brought to light, you'd be appalled. I mean, you'd be disgusted. You wouldn't be able to look at it. You'd have to look away. We see some of these reports that come in with some of the violence that the cartels do, and it's not pretty. And this is the reality of it. So when I hear one party say, well, it's humane to have an open border, no, it is not. There's nothing humane about it. Women being raped, children being used as pawns and being separated from families because they are incentivizing families to give up their children so the cartels can use them as pawns, extorting men, killing Americans with fentanyl poisonings and other drugs. There is nothing humane about that.
Man, that's crazy. That's happening on the Arizona border.
That's happening here in America. I'm 50 miles off the border and 70 miles off the border, and it's well into my county. Phoenix used to be the kidnapping capital of the world. They're probably pretty high up there on the list now because you'll see it. They would find a house with 30 people in a house that are being held by the cartels. This is happening. I would venture to say that if not, slavery is probably at an all-time high.
You know, it's crazy you say that because a few months back when the Sound of Freedom movie came out, we rented out an entire theater for a private showing for all of our clients, and I think like that was such an eye-opening thing. I think for so many of just seeing how rampant this is. But you know, I think that ties into everything what you're saying with kids that are missing and just that being sold into slavery and like I mean just like what are some of the things that have you guys had part in helping to recover some of these people or some of these houses where maybe they're going to be on their way of being sold into slavery? Like, have you guys seen some of that and helped to
We've seen a ton of it. We've seen the child predators. Like, we spend a lot of time going after child predators. Sadly, we don't even have the resources to really go work all the human trafficking, like the women that are being trafficked, because there's so many sexual predators going after your kids. So we spend so much time doing that. You recover people that were being trafficked by the cartels or being kidnapped. You recover people in cars and that are being extorted by the cartels. This is stuff we've dealt with. We've found years ago we had a U-Haul truck, a moving van that they left in the middle of the summer, and they just left it there. And there was 30 people in there, and I think the majority of them died from heat exposure.
Wow.
In there. You know, in Texas you had one with 51 people in there. These are the ones you hear about. Like, there's a lot that you don't hear about. There's a lot of bad stuff that's happening. This administration and the press don't want you to know about it because they don't want Americans to be appalled by what's happening on that southern border. But yeah, it's a disaster, and it's un-American what we're allowing to happen there. And I'm not going to stand by and just continue to let it happen. There's a limit to what I can do as a sheriff because most of these things are federal issues. The courts have deemed that. The Constitution has laid it out. What is federal, what is not. Most of these are federal issues. And so you got to take this fight to the federal government if we're going to fix it.
Yeah, and so...
And vote these people out.
Yeah, and so I think with that...
And this isn't a party thing. I don't want you to get... There are bad Republicans and Democrats that are failing us on every level. We need to get those people out that are not looking out for the American people. Absolutely. And that is the truth, is the majority of them are in it for themselves, and how they'll do and say whatever it takes to get voted in again. And I'm trying to be the change to that.
Absolutely.
Like, if you want to vote for me, I would hope you would vote for me, but I'm not going to be that guy that's going to do, I'm not bought and paid for. I'm a common man candidate, and we're just trying to restore American principles and America First values to this country.
Absolutely. No, and I mean, that's what it needs. And, you know, I think, even, man, you're talking so much about just even some of the stuff on the border. Like, what would be your plan? Like, what would be like the first step that it would take to fix that?
You got to close the border and declare these guys terrorists. They're terrorists. And you need to recognize it for what it is, which is an invasion. Invasion is an incursion of a large group of people into a sphere or place of activity, or an unwanted intrusion into somebody's domain. Both of those definitions qualify. This is an invasion. And if you declared an invasion and you call them terrorists, then you can actually get military involved. And I'm not saying you trounce into Mexico and cause all sorts of problems. What I'm saying is engage Mexico as a partner and say, we're committed to stopping these cartels once and for all. And I think Mexico would be a willing partner to that. But you got to shut it down, because you cannot mop the bathroom floor until you turn off the tub water.
Yeah.
Like, you can mop all day long, you're never going to clean it up.
Absolutely.
For some reason, people think that you can address it in New York by giving them billions of dollars. All that's going to do is pay for some hotels and put money in more people's pockets that already have a ton of it. It's going to enrich these non-governmental organizations, but it doesn't stop the problem. You got to take that money and the resources and apply it to stopping the problem. Is it going to be easy? No. Are you going to hurt some feelings? Yes, you are. But we have a country to save.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, we can't always take into consideration everybody's feelings. Hard decisions have to be made. And, we got to make sure that if people broke the law, they're held accountable. If you came here illegally, you should be held accountable.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. That's what, decisive leadership is about, right? It's making the hard decision, making the right decision, even though sometimes it's the hard thing, right?
Yeah, if everybody loves you and they love everything you do, you probably need to push yourself outside your box a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think with that, I got two more questions here for you. First one, at the end of your life, you're looking back, you're lying on your deathbed. What's the legacy you want to leave?
This is an easy one. I got this same question from Oliver North.
Okay.
I did a podcast with him a few years ago, and without hesitation for me, it's, I want to be remembered as a patriot who fought valiantly for God, family, and freedom.
That's awesome.
That's what I want. If I can be remembered as a patriot who stood in the face of evil and danger and was bold as a lion and fought for the things that this country was built on and which to me are God, family, freedom, and the Constitution,
Absolutely.
then my life was a success.
Absolutely. So I think with that, as we're going in, we're kicking off 2024, and if there was one action or takeaway you want our listeners to apply to improve their lives or their community, what would that be?
Just one?
Or hey, if you got more,
I'm gonna give you one. I'll give you three. Number one, be authentic. Be who you are. We're all different. We all have different DNA, different fingerprints, different irises. There is nobody in the world like you. You are a one of a kind. You are a gift from God to this world. If the fact that you're a one in a gazillion in this country, nobody like you, if that doesn't tell you how special your presence here is on this earth, then I don't know what to tell you. So be authentic, especially in a world of knockoffs and social media where everybody's trying to be like everybody else. Number two, don't be afraid to do the uncomfortable work. You want to be in shape, you got to have to use these ropes and these weights, and it's uncomfortable. You're going to have to get up at times and go to the gym at times you don't want to. And you're going to have to do uncomfortable work. But the one that I would have focused on if I only had one is the last one, and that is surrender the outcome. Most people who are angry or depressed or unhappy or feel anxiety in this world is because you are trying to control an outcome that you have no control over. The only thing you can control is your attitude and your work output. No matter what I do, I carry a gun, no matter how many DUIs I stopped, I could not stop my kids from dying at the hands of somebody driving under the influence of alcohol. And it reiterated what I have taught kids, that that's out of my control. Yeah. I can only surrender the outcome. If you can learn to surrender the outcome in the things that in life and let life give you what it's wanting to give you without you fighting against it. If you will embrace what it wants to give you, which may not be what you want, you will find happiness and peace. But you gotta surrender the outcome. So in this year, it's gonna get chaotic. It is gonna be a chaotic year with the election, with all the stuff happening in the world. You need now more than ever to surrender the outcome and stop trying to control things that you cannot control.
Wow, that is some profound wisdom, and I think it's so true, right? Mm-hmm. So, and man, we could keep going for so long, but I think just so everyone knows, where can they find you? Where can they follow you? If they want to connect with you, where should they go?
Yeah, first of all, please come check me out at sherifflam.com, sherifflamforsenate.com. On Instagram, it's American Sheriff. Twitter is sherifflam1. And Facebook is Sheriff Lamb. And I got to get going on LinkedIn. I'll do better on LinkedIn. And that's Sheriff Mark Lamb, I think, on LinkedIn. Please come follow me. Come support me. If you live in Arizona, get on, sign my petition, donate a few bucks. Unfortunately, it takes money to run these political things. And if you're passionate about America, guys, I'm your guy. Like I love this country and I love this state, and I am hell bent on protecting it. So please come visit me, come support me, and come support Football Boot Camp.
Yes.
See,
now we got to get you guys in. You got to do your workout in here.
I know. Come support it. These are great guys running a great business, and we need to support one another, especially where the economy's tough. Make sure you're out there supporting one another.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Sheriff Lamb, man, it has been an honor to be able
to pleasure.
Talk to you. And I mean, man, I even got some nuggets on this that I just think, again, you got some profound wisdom. And I think for everyone, if you don't know, I mean, just, man, there was so many high-level entrepreneurs and speakers and different people who have been around over the years that have helped shape me and the success, even with what Fit Body Boot Camp Arizona has turned into. Man, I think what he's dropped, if you really listen to some of the wisdom that you got, I think it will truly change your life. So, anyways, hope you apply that. And again, as I said at the beginning, if you think this has helped you, share this with someone else. Comment on the show. Let's get that word out, and let's make 2024 amazing and apply the truth bombs you just got from Sheriff Lamb. And we'll talk to you soon.
God bless everybody.